Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mama Genius Hub podcast. I'm so excited to have Nicole on. Do you have a penny for your thoughts? Because that's what she's going to tell us all about today as we talk about thoughts and emotions, how to process them, how to identify them, and how to move through them so that we're able to regulate them in ourselves and also helping our kids do that as well. So I'm so excited to have Nicole on. We'll be bringing her on. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Mama Genius Hub podcast, where we support moms with big dreams, from entrepreneurship to personal aspirations. I'm your host, Michelle Kaiser, and I'm here to help you unlock your potential in all areas of life. Join us as we explore strategies for thriving in motherhood while pursuing the dreams, the key to actually unlocking your genius. Subscribe now and embark on a journey to realize your fullest potential. So Nicole Oke is the author of the Penny Panda series, which we were just talking about how my son loves pandas, including Penny Panda and the Gift of Possibilities, and Penny Panda and the Emotional Ninjas. We're going to dive into those emotions today. These charming books follow Izzy as she learns to navigate her emotions as she helps her companion Penny Panda. Highlight themes of emotional intelligence, self-confidence, and friendship, as aren't those such important aspects as kids? In interviews, Nicole shares the inspiration behind her work, her writing process, and personal anecdotes that bring the books to life. With a series of receiving praises, readers, and educators, Nicole's insights foster emotional literacy in children, providing valuable and engaging content for the audience. Welcome to Mama Genius Hub, Nicole. We're so excited to have you today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Well, we just dive right in, Nicole. Okay. What is your why behind wanting to work with emotional intelligence and really get that out there? I mean, it must originate from somewhere.
Yeah, it actually started about probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was doing a lot of my own emotional development, and I was going through some things in life that were a little bit hard for me to handle emotionally. So I was really delving into that self-help, self-improvement, and I was learning so many cool things, especially in the emotional intelligence arena, that I just kind of kept looking back at my kids thinking, I want to be able to pass this on to them. I want them to be able to grasp some of these same concepts and start learning about it at an early age. So maybe they won't be, in their mid to late 30s, finally figuring this stuff out. And so I went on Amazon and did, what I'd say most of us moms do when we're looking for books. Go to Amazon and just kind of type in those search keys. And I kept finding books that talked about that emotions are good. It's good to have them, how to identify them. But I really wanted that next step. Like I wanted those useful tools, those games that you could play with your kids, or skills that they could start to build to really learn to process those emotions and then move through them to like get to that other side, to that emotional regulation. And I couldn't find what I was looking for. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey into becoming an author. And the Penny Panda series was, I couldn't find what I wanted, and I knew there was a gap out there. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to write them for my kids, that was the original goal. Then I was like, if it can help them, it could probably help a lot of other kids too. So that's why I decided to publish.
I love that so much. And that's so inspiring because that is the case. Like, especially as a mom, you're looking for something. It's not out there. Well, what's the next step? And I love that you took that step and you're like, well, I'm going to create for my kids, but let's put it out there to the world. And I think that's what this podcast also is all about, is really how do we inspire that in each of us to get out that creation, whatever it is inside of us, because, well, I'm going to have to ask, I mean, so you made that decision, and we're going a little bit away from emotional just for a moment, because
oh yeah, sure.
I'm just warning the audience because that's how I go. As we move away from that for a minute, but I just want to go into what was that going down that role, like what fears, what came up that almost, I'm sure something almost stopped you at some point, but what you pushed through to actually get these books out there?
There were a lot of hurdles and obstacles that I worked through, and the first book was such a learning experience. I went into it, I would say I was a little naive. I kind of had this, and I think a lot of us sometimes do this when we're first creating something brand new. We're like, this is so cool. This is so awesome. Of course, everyone's going to love it. I'm going to create it. People are going to want to buy it. Mm-hmm. And that just isn't the reality, unfortunately. So that was kind of a hard lesson for me to learn was, yes, you need that great, amazing product, but you also need to build your brand and to market your product and to find your audience and to, do a lot of that work ahead of time. So I think, and I don't think it's uncommon for authors. I think we often jump into the writing because that's our favorite part of it. And we create these wonderful, inspiring books, and then we think about how we should market them. So I tried to do the reverse this last time with my second book, and I focused more on the marketing ahead of time and really like building my audience and connecting with my readers and finding that community to share the message with. And I think that's really helped the second book, but it was definitely a really big learning curve.
We meant to deviate from emotional intelligence, but I think we kind of like just gave an example of it. Because you had to push through, and you could have easily just said, "Nope, I'm done. Not going to do it." And sometimes that's what we do when we're dealing with our emotions, and we start to suppress them or not realize them. And even when you said you were looking at the Amazon books, you were seeing like emotions are good, emotions, and a lot of times, especially as moms, I'll see just we got to quiet the kid. Like we're embarrassed of the emotion. We're trying to. That's not the way they're supposed to behave. So let's do some. So what do we do in those instances? Like as a mom, you're feeling like your kid throws a tantrum in the middle of the grocery store. What are some tools or things that we could use for that?
My biggest piece of advice for that situation is to start practicing a couple of different like skills at a time, and to start practicing them on the small things. Because I ran into this myself when I was starting my own like emotional intelligence journey. It was like, okay, I've got these skills and I'm ready for the hard stuff. And then the hard stuff would happen. And it's like, okay, I'm not ready for the hard stuff. I haven't been practicing. Just because I have the tool. It's just like a physical tool, right? A chainsaw or a hammer. Just because you have it in your tool belt, if you don't know how to use it and you haven't been practicing with it, when the time comes, you're not going to be prepared. And so that's my biggest thing for parents all the time is like practice on the little meltdowns, practice at home when it's a safe space for both you and the child, and you don't have to worry about like regulating your emotions on top of helping them through their situation. One of the eye-opening moments for me was when my oldest daughter, she was probably 3 or 4, and she spilled glitter all over the floor, and she just had this huge meltdown. And at that time, I'd been kind of practicing some of my own emotional intelligence. And so I said, okay, I want to feel what she's feeling. I want to not just jump into like, it's okay, we've got more glitter, everything will be fine. Like I was asking her questions. Tell me why you're so upset. Tell me what it is about the glitter being spilled that's causing you to feel this way. Like, let's journey through this together. And it was practicing on that, something small like that, and then continuing. I remember another time she was in the car and she dropped, again, she was probably 4. She dropped a piece of candy on the floor and she just started bawling. And, as a parent, my natural instinct is to be like, well, we've got more candy. You can have another piece of candy. But instead, I went and I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to practice. And I said, tell me what's upsetting you about this. Tell me how you're feeling. And it's really interesting, especially when they're young, some of the stories and the connections that they make. Like, I don't even remember exactly how it went, but somehow it went from dropping her candy to something about her shoes and school. And it was like this whole emotional roller coaster. But what I found in practicing in those small moments is it's like we were able to move from being upset to identifying what we're feeling, which can move your child into, out of that kind of primary emotional brain into a more logical state. And then really kind of talking through and letting them just kind of write those emotions for a minute and tell you about it. And then it kind of ends, if we give them the time, they'll kind of come to their own conclusions and they'll figure it out for themselves that it's going to be okay. And, as a parent, I think in those situations, our job is to reassure them, to be like, to say, you're not alone. I'm here with you. It's okay if you're upset. I understand too, that sometimes in life, when we're in that grocery store or something like that. We may not have the luxury of that time, but the more that you practice this and the more you build those relationships, the easier it is in those bigger moments to say, okay, I want to hear all about why this is so upsetting to you, but let's do it when we get to the car. Let's get through the checkout line. We need to get this done first. And then I want to hear everything you have to tell me. And being able to build those relationships and then kind of, practice. So when those big moments come, it can be really helpful.
Oh, I love that so much. And it's so true that the conversations I've had with my 8-year-old and the amount of stories, and like when you give them time and space, like you would never have pictured what the connections that they make together and like what is really bothering them. And we try to assume, and it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal in these little eyes who have done all that. But we'll talk about that right when we get back. Attention mompreneurs. Do you feel like you're constantly juggling the responsibilities without a moment to yourself? It's time to pause and reflect with our Mama Genius quiz. Tailored for busy mamas like you, this quiz will help you identify what's blocking your path and inspire you to harness your unique strengths, transform how you manage life and business, find your rhythm, and ignite your joy. Visit mamageniushub.com today to discover your Mama Genius. And that's mamageniushub.com. And remember, with the quiz or any of that, it's about being that role model first. And so I love how Nicole was talking about how she had to learn to regulate her own feelings first. And once we start to do that, then we're in the space where we can work with them to regulate their feelings. I love how you're talking about the small moments and starting there. But I want to double back then now to those feelings as a little kid, because we think that candy dropping isn't a very big deal. Like we have like 20 million things going on in our heads as busy moms, right? But you think about a 4-year-old, you think about an 8-year-old who that just happened to, that is their world.
It's a big deal.
So, yeah, you can take it from there.
Oh, yeah. No, you're completely right. It's a big deal to them when they're that age. And sometimes it's hard as a parent to remember that. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's such a great point.
And it's always that reminder. And the more that we change that perspective, and the more we're out there to be open to that perspective change as a mom. And again, I don't like the word advice. I like the word of let's figure out what our own rhythm is. And as you're hearing these ideas that are coming forth, if they hit you right here in the heart, they hit you in the gut, they hit you in your intuition, those are the ones to implement for your kids. And you might only implement for one of your kids, because each of our kids are so different. So I like to keep saying that over and over, because don't know what episode people are watching or what, but it's really, let's get into your mom intuition, because you are a mama. And I want to commend you for that. And so this is here just to help open perspectives and to help give you ideas to play with. There's no right or wrong. There's you figuring out what works best for your kid, for your family, and let's go from there. So moving on to more emotional regulation, though, we're getting to, I know you're talking about how we get to that thought process, identifying it. So I want to know if you have a framework, tips, or what can moms do to, first, let's start with the mom, because I know, like, let's start with that again. And we talked a little bit about the kids, but let's get back to the mom and then go into the kids a little bit more.
So the number one thing you can do as a mom is to really work on your own self-awareness and to kind of learn about your own triggers, to figure out what things upset you, how you react in certain situations, what things throw you off balance. So then you can be able to start predicting when you may have more, it may be harder to emotionally regulate yourself. It's also good to develop your emotional vocabulary. There are so many words that we use interchangeably that really don't mean the same thing, like envy and jealousy. We sometimes use those, but they don't really mean the same thing. And so the more that you can learn about the emotions and how you feel emotions and demonstrate that even for your kids, that's like an amazing place to start. And I communicate all of that. It's kind of like, when they recommend when your children are little that you explain everything you do, kind of narrate your life. And that helps them learn the words, like mom's cooking on the stove is hot. Like we do that to help build their vocabulary, but you can do that with emotional vocabulary too. I'll tell my kids quite often, I'm feeling overstimulated. The TV's on, the radio's on, we've got toys making noise, and we're all singing. That's too much for mom right now. So I need to turn one of these off. And so I'm kind of narrating my emotions for them. And I've even done that with bigger things. When I've had some big disappointments at work, or like if I didn't get a promotion or something, I've had my oldest daughter ask me about it, and I'll narrate for her the same things. I mean, I don't go, you keep it age appropriate, obviously, but I'll tell her, I was in for a job. I really was hoping to get it. I didn't. It hurts. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. I was really hopeful about it. I explained it's going to take me a little while to feel better, but I will, and we'll get there. And I think it's so important because it helps you as an individual process what's happening as well, because sometimes we don't want to think about it, right? And when we don't think about it, really what we're doing is just feeling it physically everywhere else. So if you can think about it, if you can talk about it, process through it, that really kind of helps you. And then when you're doing that and explaining it to your children, it's demonstrating, it's giving them an example into the language. It's showing them how to process through emotions. It's showing them it's okay to process through emotions, and that life is complicated and it's hard, but you can also survive, right? And that we're resilient and we can get through it.
I want to add a couple things to that. One of our natural responses are fight, flight, or freeze, right? Mm-hmm. But what I've noticed, it was on a different podcast as well, is I never thought about, most of us have the tendency to do one over one of the other ones. I realized that mine was flight. Like as soon as when you feel that urge in yourself, like that the kids are like, so the tantrum thrown, my reaction is to leave, or I have to have a difficult conversation. I'm like, get me out of here. And so, but as you start to identify those things, so even that 10 cents, as we're talking about identification, is like maybe one of those three stands out for you. When you feel that urge in yourself, you're like, oh, that's what I wanted. That's what my body's telling me to do. But now I can start to regulate that and make a different choice. Again, it's all about awareness and starting to recognize what are your patterns so you can disrupt it and then make a change. And then I forgot my other point altogether. We get that one out. The other one, I do remember the other one, is also when we're talking to our kids about that. And again, going back, and I'm going to say it's every single podcast probably is, the lips, close them. Sit there with your kids. Hold their hand to show them you're with them, but let them keep talking, even in silence.
Yes.
Do not give your 2 cents. Really just sit with them. If you need to say something, make sure you just repeat what they said and say, am I understanding you correctly? And repeat what they said versus trying to give them advice or change the subject or change something. Let them start processing for themselves, because when they're at school or they're other places, you're not there to fix it for them. They need to start believing in themselves to make that self-regulation. And so the best thing you can do is just sit with them and ask what they need.
Yes, completely. And it's one of the hardest things to do.
That's so true. I mean, we're here talking, right? All we ever want to do is talk, right? And then we want to give our 2 cents. And our brain tells us, like, how do I fix this? How do we do? That's what society tells. We're in a masculine idea of how do we just move on? Quick, snap. Feelings are not snap. No. Feelings need to regulate, need to pass through. And I love how you brought up talk it through. And so, and I love this part is like when you're talking to someone and they say, well, you should do this. How do you feel?
Yeah, you don't really like it most of the time.
But we do it to our kids nonstop. Yeah. And if think about when your husband's done that to you, or your spouse, or whoever, your friend, when they do that to you, you're like, they don't know what's going on. So we got to keep that in mind when we're doing that to our little ones.
Yes.
And just that feeling of not being heard or seen. And that's what emotions is all about, is being seen or heard and really getting that out. And so I want to throw it back to you. I don't know what I was asking. Is there anything else you want to add, Nicole, to that before we go into our next commercial?
Well, and I would just say, adding on, because you kind of talked about too, bringing in the spouse or the partner into it too, and how we communicate with them. That's another area that I think we can really kind of expose our kids to some of this as well. My husband and I try to be very purposeful in how we talk to each other, especially in front of the children. But we try to, if we have hurt feelings, or if we have, some sort of conflict, we try to demonstrate the same way that we want our children to handle conflict in front of them. So we'll talk about our emotions to each other. We use the I statements. I feel this way when this happens. I didn't feel heard when this happened. And we demonstrate that in front of our kids as well, so that when it comes time to have the conversations with them, it's the same kind of dialogue that's happening. So they're exposed to it, they're used to it. And then we also do it with it's all good things, but the more like uplifting stuff too. We say thank you for every little thing. It's my husband's kind of job, if you will, to take the trash out. But every time he does, I say thank you for taking the trash out, just to show that appreciation for the things that he's doing. And incorporating those little elements into your relationship with other people that your children are watching is another great way, because they're going to soak all that in. And no matter what you tell them, right, they're not going to do necessarily what you tell them. They're going to do what they see. They're going to watch the way that you behave, and they're going to act and behave in similar ways.
It really comes back to being that role model that you want your kids to be. And that's what the Mama Genius Hub is all about, is live in the genius that you want. And then you can inspire them to find their own. And we'll be right back, because I think that leads us into the next segment.
Do you ever feel like your own dreams are fading on you as you focus and keep everything together for your family? Or been buried under laundry and school runs and endless to-do lists? They're so deep, you don't even know what they are anymore. The Mama Genius Hub is here to help you uncover that part of you again. Maybe you felt that pull to start a passion project, return to a hobby you once loved, or pursue a career that lights you up, but you're so caught in everyone else's needs that you keep slipping through the cracks. In just 15 minutes a day, our mini courses will help you reconnect with those dreams while finding a new rhythm in motherhood's beautiful, messy life. And best of all, you'll be doing it with a community of moms who truly understand the juggle and the joy. The Mama Genius Hub is a community who've been there and are here to support and inspire each other every step of the way. It's time to rediscover your spark, live in your genius, and inspire your kids by showing them how to follow their own passions. Join the Mama Genius Hub today and start creating space for you again without guilt or doing it solo.
Come to www.connectingmamas.com for more details.
And we're back. So I was actually looking over my notes before I give my takeaways, and I wanted to touch back on one thing before I go into our final questions. You talked about useful tools and processes to get to the motion side. Do you have one handy that I know we talked about a couple in here, but is there one that you that we haven't talked about that you want to throw out?
Yeah, so each book, actually, I try to introduce a new tool or a new method that parents can use to talk about these things. So in the first book, it's Penny Panda and the Gift of Possibility. And in that book, they use the possibility game, where we take anytime that our kids make an assumption about something. So an example from my oldest daughter, came home one day and she said, I don't think my friend likes me anymore. And I said, well, why would you think that? And she said, well, she doesn't want to play with me at recess. And so I get her to kind of tell me a little more about what's happening. And then I say, well, let's play the possibility game, right? One possibility is she doesn't want to play with you at recess because she doesn't want to be your friend anymore. That's one possibility. What are other possibilities? And then we list out a whole bunch. She didn't want to play the same thing that she was playing at recess, so she went to play something else. She wasn't feeling very good, so she decided she wanted to read her book at recess instead of playing. She's got things going on at home that she's worried about. Maybe she has like a sick sibling or something like that, and that's why she didn't really want to go play today. Or maybe she wanted to spend some time with a friend she hasn't played with for a while. And so all of these kind of open up our child's minds to think, to really question that automatic meaning that we give to things and think of all the other possibilities. And I like to really try to emphasize, especially in a situation like that, what else could be going on for that person? Like, I try not to make it about, the child that I'm talking to, because most often, even though we all like to think we're the center of the universe, most often it's really not about us. It's about that other person.
Exactly.
So, maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she wasn't feeling good. Really kind of emphasizing those possibilities. And it just really opens that mind up And then they don't feel so set in what, no, it must be true that she doesn't want to be my friend anymore. Well, if that was true, then how could there be all these other possibilities? So that's one tool that I like to use that comes in the first book. And then the second book is all about being able to kind of visualize our emotions as these separate little, we call it in the book, they're ninjas, because it's Penny Panda and the Emotion Ninjas. But being able to kind of separate them a little bit from ourselves, knowing that they're part of us, that they're here to help us, that they serve a purpose, but we get to choose what we do with our ninjas. We're the boss of our ninjas. And so with that tool, my goal is for parents to be able to kind of have another way to communicate emotions with their kids, to be like, okay, something's going on. Which emotion are you with right now? Which emotion is coming in and the strongest right now? To be able to have kind of a fun way to talk about emotions and feelings. And I've had my kids come back at me and say, it's my angry ninja, Mom. My angry ninja is here. I'm like, okay, so let's talk. Let's figure out why. Let's talk to your angry ninja and find out why they're here. And then maybe we can figure out what's really going on.
Oh, I love that so much. On that note, we're going to get to our final question today because we are running out of time. What do you think is one of the common misconceptions about motherhood that holds many moms back from truly stepping into their genius?
I think the biggest misconception is that we all have this feeling, and I don't know where we get it from, if it's from society or from our own selves, but we have this idea that we need to be perfect and that we need to do it all right, that we need to be the best at everything that we do, and that we can't ever make a mistake and get it wrong. And I can't even tell you how many times I've had conversations with fellow moms where just waiting at school for pickup or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my kid had a meltdown. And there's this sense of relief with all the other parents. Like, you too? I'm not alone. We have this fear of talking about the hard stuff and the stuff that isn't going well. And you don't have to be perfect. You're showing up, you're trying. Obviously, if you're listening to podcasts like this, you're doing everything within your power to really be the best mom that you can be. And that's got to be good enough, because we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes.
And remember, done is always better than perfect, because you're going to keep circling your head. Oh, I can do that. I can do that. And we live in that perfection. That's what causes procrastination, is that we're thinking, we want to skip from learning how to do something to it just being right. Well, then we don't have that learning curve. We don't have that journey and all of that goes with it. So we got to change that mindset to be done is better than perfect, and perfectly uneven. That it gets done. And on that note, the beta launch of the Mama Genius Hub was this week, imperfectly, kind of quiet, but just getting it out there. And it was better than waiting till it doesn't work on the phone yet. It was better than waiting till it does. We have computer access. Let's get started. Let's get this stuff out here. Let's start moving forward. So on that note, Nicole, tell everyone how they can get a hold of you and if you have a free gift for us.
Yes, of course. So you can get a hold of me on almost any social media platform. The wonderful thing about having a last name of Oke, spelled O-K-E, is that it's very unique. So even if you just put in Google Nicole Oke, spelled O-K-E, you will find all of my social media and my website. Instagram is at Nicole Oke Author, Facebook at Nicole Oke Author, and my website is Nicole Oke Author. So I tried to keep everything pretty simple and even for folks to get to. I do have a freebie that you'll be able to share with your audience, and it's for some ninja mindfulness exercises. And these go along with the second book, Penny Panda and the Emotion Ninjas. And then if you subscribe for that, you'll also get onto my mailing list. And I have a whole bunch of freebies coming out, especially over the holidays. I try to give away activity books and lessons for the kids, all sorts of fun stuff.
Well, we need those for the holidays, because with all the travel, everything coming up. Actually, my daughter wanted to, side note, my daughter wanted to buy something from the book fair at school. I said, sure. And it was an activity book. And I said, sure, you can buy the book, but it's going in my backpack right now, and you can have it on the plane when we go to Seattle.
Right.
So some just quick tips for you. If they want those things, say yes. And then just put, but it is in my work bag now, because I knew I was going to forget it, but I won't forget my work bag.
Right.
And so it's there right now. It's sitting right there right now. She bought it last week or something. And I was just like, you will have that on the plane. all yours.
Yes. That's
Actually,
awesome.
thinking about it, I'm not traveling with her. I need to give it to my husband. Mental note. All right, moving. So with that note, we're going to take you away for a minute, and we're going to go through the key takeaways from today. I'm so excited. There's so many of them. Wasn't that an amazing episode going through? And so the first key takeaway was to give those useful tools and process emotions to get through to the other side. And so I kind of circled back to that, and she told us about that possibility game inside, how we question that meaning. What else is actually going on? And that is the case most time, because when we think about it, we think everyone's paying attention to us, but most time everyone's paying attention to themselves and not realizing what's going on with them. So our kids aren't realizing that as well. Even as adults, we forget that too. So it's a really good reminder of the possibilities of what's going on. Number 2, that we start the practicing skills in the smaller skills at home in time. So like we were talking about the grocery store incident, that if you're practicing those stuff ahead of time, then you're able to handle that differently. So we have that tool of practicing at home, regulating on our home, having those conversations about that before situations happen in the grocery store. And they will happen. And I've done that too, where your kids want your attention and they really want your attention at that moment. You can say, I can't give you my full attention right now, but in 15 minutes, you got it. And usually that's the case. And the same thing with the store is when they're throwing that met down going, can you tell that to me? Let's finish this up. Can we get to the car? And the floor is yours. Just know that, say that you want to give them your full undivided attention, because it's essentially what you want to do. You don't want to blow them off. And then that comes to number 3, where we start asking the questions. Then when they're telling us what it is, we start saying, why are you upset? Why are you feeling this way? And those stories, we don't realize it. They're 8, they're 6. This is a big deal to them. And the things that they connect in their head, like they're like almost inspirational, because like I look at her and go, how the heck would you put those things together? And so we have to take ourselves back, and you listening to this right now is a good step, and just reminding us those are the key steps, so that we're really listening to them, creating those stronger connections, because we're giving them our full time. And we can't always do it, but you can tell them, I can do it in half an hour. I can do it in 5 minutes. Which then leads us into step number 4, which is that self-awareness of your own triggers. We talked about figuring out what upsets you, what throws you off balance, starting to identify those things, because usually when you're triggered by something in someone else, it's because something's happened to you or whatever it is. When you start to identify that, you know to look for that. And I brought up the idea of the fight, flight, and freeze, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a flight person. I didn't quite realize it till someone pointed it, like to identify what it is. So what from those 3 do you do more often? And you're like, oh, that's why I do that. And when we start to make those connections, we're able to stop the pattern and make a change, which then leads us to number 5, where she was talking about that purposeful talk, having those conversations with your spouses or one of the kids, or always using those I statements. I feel, it didn't feel good when this happened. And then also going into that gratitude and that appreciation of when someone does something. She gave the instance of her husband going out, and when my husband cooks dinner, it's like, thank you for cooking dinner. Or actually my husband has been in China, and my almost 14-year-old he cooked all day Sunday. I have to admit, I have to give him props, because he cooked dinner on Sunday. He cooked pumpkin banana bread, a pumpkin pie, and he cooked 2 meals for this week. We have lasagna in the refrigerator, and we have tacos for enchiladas for tonight that are just ready to go into the oven, because he wanted to help and he loves cooking. That's because we gave him the opportunity to develop that skill. And it's paid off in spades, except that I did have to come downstairs, brace myself for the mess in the kitchen, not say a word, kept it to myself, just cleaned up slowly behind him, and then kind of went through that. And then all I did was thank him for all his hard work, because it was a lot of work despite the mess in the kitchen. It was saved me a lot of time this week. So I truly, truly appreciate it. I'm going to bring back Nicole for her final takeaway.
Yeah, thank you. You had so many amazing takeaways. I love it. And yeah, I think just my last takeaway would be, when it comes to emotional intelligence and social emotional learning, you just got to keep practicing and keep trying and get up every day and just do it again.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's been an honor to have you on here, learn more, dive into those emotions, because it is really about the more tools we learn. And again, these are tools, ideas. Figure out the ones that sit well with you. That's why we're just giving options. There's no mandatoriness. There's what works for my kid, for my family. Just always remember that. Listen to your own intuition, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Mama Genius Hub podcast. If you found value in our conversation, Please share this episode with another mama who might benefit. Sharing helps us build a supportive community and reach out to more mamas like you. After all, it's more fun when we do motherhood together. Until next time, stay motivated and continue to pursue your dreams as you shine in your genius.